Dr. David Wiss. Good to see you. Dr. David Wiss is a mental health scientist and a registered dietitian, nutritionist. He founded the Nutrition in Recovery, a group practice in LA, and developed the WISE, excuse me, the WISE Mind Nutrition Map app. He has a decade of experience as a clinician, a researcher, and working one on one with his patients. He's authored more than 20 peer reviewed journal articles, and he's passionate about the recovery from disordered eating and is a pioneer in the harm reduction approaches for ultra processed foods and disorders. And thank you so much for being here. We so appreciate just all that you're going to be able to give us today.
Yeah, thanks for putting on such an awesome event. I love the energy. Seeing a couple people pop in and excited to chat with you and build.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'd love for you to just kind of give us a little bit of your background and how you came to this work. And then we want to dive right into the questions around really commanding the holidays, and start off by context. This
Sure.
holiday eating and, the meal versus cookies and just all of the influences that we have over cravings and how it affects our mental health.
Yeah, thank you. Being a nutritionist definitely wasn't my plan. I wasn't growing up saying I'm going to be into health. It's quite the opposite. I'm one of those people that had a very common story of hitting a health low at some point and seeing the need to put some emphasis on this in my own life and then developing a passion and wanting to share it with the world. I hit that low in my early 20s. So I had mental health issues, addiction issues. I got myself into a lot of trouble, and nutrition was the path out. Nutrition, exercise, sunlight, sleep, spirituality, recovery. I went back to school, and my world opened up really quickly. I think I had the kind of results that people wish they could have. I got to be honest, like this idea of like you start making changes and then like within a few months, like your whole life is different. Everyone's like, "Hey, who are you?" Right? Like that actually happened to me, and God, I was so receptive to the message of change at the time. I guess I was desperate, like nothing mattered more to me than building a different life, and I was ripe for change. I had hit some pretty low spots and ended up kind of like a white canvas. And the cool part about my situation was I didn't have like a lot of guidance. I didn't have a nutritionist. I just started tapping into my intuition. There was just some really basic fundamental things that I knew, like all the stuff that I had been doing probably wasn't great. All the stuff that I hadn't been doing probably had some promise to it, So I
Yeah.
was like, I've never had sprouted, lentils before, and I really haven't given blackberries a shot, and I just started eating all the things that I didn't love, and yeah, it happened. Fast forward a few weeks, I started loving them. Few months, I started craving them. Uh, about a year later, it was the only thing I wanted to eat, So I listened to my gut, I listened to my heart, and I made changes. And yeah, it led me to, going back, finishing the undergrad, master's degree, starting my practice 10 plus years ago, nutrition and recovery for people with addiction issues and eating disorder issues, and then PhD program, UCLA, public health, health psychology, and then into tech, building an app to help people improve their relationship with food one day at a time.
I love it. I love it. That is just such a mouthful. And it's so refreshing to hear your journey, because a lot of people think that those small changes don't necessarily make the difference. And so it's really good to hear that it's okay to take those one or two steps and make that real
Create a
lifestyle.
revolution. It
Yeah.
led to a revolution in my life.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so you said that it started, was it a health issue, or what was
It
the
was addiction issues. I had,
condition?
yeah, substance use disorder,
Mhm.
severe. I'm gonna call it, the product of the rave scene in the early 2000s, and yeah,
Yeah,
crash and burn. Just didn't. It was alcohol and pills and drugs and things that made it very, basically impossible to care about other things. If you get
got
what I
it.
was, yeah,
Got it. Absolutely. Awesome. And I've interviewed other experts, the same situation, that
yeah,
um the addiction to one substance doesn't stop. It's a part of who you are.
yep.
And the same thing with other with individuals who don't necessarily have a bunch of addictions, but just the reminder that there are gateways.
Yeah. And it gave me really good insight into addiction, cross addiction. And this was
Mhm.
also right around the time when food addiction, sugar addiction research started to show up in the scientific literature and the popular press. And I just, remember, because I worked in rehabs early on in my journey, helping people change their eating. And I remember the resistance from my field. They were like, no, food's not addicting, sugar's not addicting, this is BS, because they weren't people in recovery that had any
Right.
history with that. So like they just couldn't wrap their mind around that possibility. The same way 80 years ago, people said, no, alcoholism doesn't exist. You guys are losers. You need to like just try harder. That energy existed in the world. And I saw it recreating itself with the addiction stuff. Some of the biggest naysayers against sugar addiction and food addiction were like the nutritionists, right? They were like, that's impossible. So I was one of the few people early on that was like, actually, we need to think about the neuroscience stuff a little bit more,
Hmm.
because it is true that when some people eat these foods, there's usually, two different phenotypes, in my opinion. One is the more body dominant type that once you start to eat them, like it really sets off a craving cascade.
Hmm.
And then there's also the type of person that might not binge or go to great lengths to get more, but you better believe they're going to think about it tomorrow.
Hmm.
Once you introduce it, the mind starts queuing things up and assigning value to addicting like experiences. So I was one of the few dietitians to really be vocal about addiction like eating. And um, it's been a long journey, fruitful career for sure, but not without contention and disagreement and even some lost friends along the way.
No, I get it. I get it. Well, that's what pioneers are all about.
Right on.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you've stuck with it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'll say one other piece about it. I'm not a classic food addiction um person in that I believe, all people need to be abstinent all the time. I do a lot of um harm reduction work and eating
Hmm.
disorder work, and I just believe in the construct. I believe in the neuroscience of it rather than this idea that everyone needs to get on board with some sort of a abstinent food plan.
Good, good. Well, let's just dive in. You always talk about context matters. Help us to really understand the context of the holidays, and how we should be approaching having that one cookie versus, going and binging.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, holidays are special because there's different energy in the world and there's different people in the space, right? And there's exchanges of feelings and gifts. And so I don't want to say, it's just another day, right? Because it's not. But like when you can think about it like just another day, it helps a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like I've always tell people like eat breakfast, eat a big breakfast on Thanksgiving. Just it's just another day, do
Yeah.
your thing, right? But the context that is different is that sometimes there's a lot of effort that goes in and it's exhausting. There's people that you don't see often that can be exhausting, right? There's a lot of maybe relationships that haven't um, been repaired the way they might be able to. And so the context is different, in the holidays. And I think it's one of the reasons why people tend to have more loss of control eating. It's not just societal pressure to eat pie, right? Like that does exist, right? It's like, oh, this is what we do in the holidays. This is kind of like what we do to get together. But there's also the context of, God, we were just on an airplane and life is hard, and oh, we're gonna have to see, so and so. And so it adds an extra element of needing relief, seeking comfort, wanting to escape, right? Or just what a lot of people call emotional eating, right? So I've always made the argument for many years that, eating a cookie or a dessert, from a place of, God, life is good. I feel centered and I've kicked butt today and I checked everything off of my to-do list. And I had a great workout and I feel really proud of who I am. And I'm going to experiment with some sort of a fun food is very different than, God, I feel beat up by life. These people don't like me. I'm tired, right? And eating the food from that particular state. So when I
Or
think about
lonely, lonely,
lonely,
the opposite.
bored, decimated by life, yeah. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, some people are forced to be around family members that are difficult, and some people have less family nearby and
Mhm,
end up lonely on the holidays. Yeah, so many factors, contextual factors that
mhm,
matter. Thank
mhm.
you for adding that.
No worries. And then how do you deal with it though? How do you kind of or what strategies would you suggest for both of those the ends of the continuum?
Yeah, I believe in food and I believe in eating, and I believe that the solution to disordered eating is eating and staying well fed and well nourished. And I think there's really no scenario when, like, going long periods of time without eating is going to be helpful.
Mhm.
And it's a tough sell for someone that feels uncomfortable in their body and doesn't like assign positive emotions to food, to be like, actually, the solution is to, like, stay well fed, well nourished, never get too hungry, never get too full, keep your fridge stocked and just eat. You know what I'm saying? Eat the right foods that are minimally processed, that you enjoy, that love you back, etc. A lot of people do have a natural tendency when feeling off, when feeling low, to just like believe that not eating will be fruitful. It's a fun game, a little exercise. I would play it right now if we had hands to raise, but yeah, you ask people, when they get really stressed out, do they either lose their appetite or gain their appetite? And like, it's usually a pretty even split. You know what I mean? Some people say they get hungry and ravenous. It depends, someone said,
Yeah.
right?
So let's do this. Dr. Witt, let's do this. So put an H in the chat if when your stress level goes up, you get hungry and
Yes.
you want to eat. Yeah.
So we got the hungry types coming on in.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And then also if you get stressed, you put an L. So you lose your appetite
Lose. Yeah.
in the chat. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because I know for me, I lost my dad a couple of months ago. And even though I do this work, I still had that urge for emotional eating.
Huh.
And so
Yeah.
I craved
Sometimes
sweet. Mhm,
couple L's, couple depends, right?
mhm. But mostly, the appetite goes up.
My peeps, you know what I'm saying?
That's
My
right, that's
crowd, you
right.
know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah.
we're all
Uh,
human.
okay, someone put some nuance, right? Grief, rejection gives different responses.
Oh, that's
But yeah,
true.
a lot of people that might have a more quote unquote normal relationship with food, they'll lose their appetite sometimes, and then it comes back later in a
Mm,
ravenous way,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Um, so yeah, just
Strategies for both.
knowing who we are, knowing what we're up against, knowing what our triggers are, and then just building a support network around them. Like, for example, if someone knows they're going to be alone for a holiday, right? It's like,
Mhm,
that's why we have 12-step marathons and groups and social support galore. At least in my community, there's a lot of ways for people to connect. And then I also say, on the flip side, if you're going to be walking into a relationship that has a long history of difficulty. Like, why not this be the year to like take the lead and make amends and clean up some of the old stuff? You know what I mean?
Mm,
I just believe in that. Even if that person is wrong. It's like if it's affecting your relationship with food, if there's something they did and you're carrying a resentment and it makes you not want to go to the holiday and it makes you want to eat, then you're drinking the poison. Uh even if they're at fault, take the lead, clean up the relationship, say, hey, it bothers me that we haven't connected so well in the last few years. I just want to let you know that you matter to me, and it would be great if we could have a heartfelt hug, you know and just to imagine just that, how that could have an impact on our eating patterns through not just that day or that week, but through our lives, right? Cleaning up wreckage of our past and just getting free with old stuff so we can start trusting the new signals, getting a clear conscience. This is why I've always made the argument that addiction and addiction like eating isn't just about food plans and ingredient lists. It's about just doing recovery work,
that's right.
just doing necessary recovery work, healing, being able to look the world in the eye, saying what you mean, meaning what you say, showing up with heart-filled energy,
Mhm.
being a person that makes contributions, right? Like that's the key to a long-term sustainable relationship with food. And I'm not suggesting that it's easy, and I'm not suggesting that it has to be the 12 steps. I'm just saying there's a lot of room for growth and repair. And if you do that stuff, your relationship with food will improve.
Absolutely. That is so powerful. I mean, talk about being responsible for not only your health, but your mental health, and not putting it out there of
Mhm.
that person hurt me, that person disappointed me. Let me be the one to take that first step
Mhm.
to clean things up, and you'd be surprised how it kind of cascades throughout your life.
Oh,
That's
and this year that
beautiful.
person voted for so and so, or what
Right,
I mean? We're dealing
right.
with that this year. Come on, y'all. Let's
Yes,
rise above it. I know it's hard. Society wants us fighting each other. Society wants us divided. We're fighting the wrong fights. We need to stick together, and we need to band together and fight up against the real structural inequities that come through the commercial determinants of health, the greedy corporations that keep getting away with feeding us poison, and basically laughing to the bank while we're sick and arguing amongst each other you
right.
know
Over what injection we should be taking versus doing the actual work,
that's right.
mentally and physically. I love that.
Yes.
And, not a lot of people probably are aware or know what the social determinants of health are. Can you
Yeah.
break that down for us?
Yeah, so the social determinants of health are all the different conditions that people kind of live, work, play, age, worship, all the different factors that are non-medical that contribute to our health. And, of course, these social determinants are related to things like, income, neighborhood, right? Education, and they're linked to things like, obviously socioeconomic status and gender, race, culture. And so they're all very supercharged issues. And, my PhD is in public health,
Mhm,
and I was trained in the social determinants of health. This
mhm,
is how to look at, all the different factors that can contribute to health outcomes over the lifespan. And, in the last few years, I've really taken more interest in what we call the commercial determinants of health. This is a
mm,
totally new emerging area, and it's not contrary to the social or political determinants of health. It's just a new view that looks at how commercial actors, are influencing health through not just marketing, but through shaping norms, um, collaborating with other agencies, and basically being able to dominate through unhealthy commodities like alcohol, tobacco, and ultra processed foods, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
part of what I'm doing with sugar addiction and food addiction research is really trying to think about food companies and public policy and health
Yeah.
policy, because,
Mhm.
again, it's like people are trying to figure it out on our own. And the main conclusion from a lot of the food addiction, sugar addiction research is that people shouldn't like have to burden this feeling of failed personal responsibility. That
That's
like
true.
it's just too hard to expect someone that has a childhood trauma background, long history of addiction, to live in a food swamp where they're just inundated with,
Mhm.
right? They go to the store to get some office supplies, and there's candy at the checkout, and right, like to actually expect someone to be able to navigate that is difficult. It's not impossible. We see it all the time. You and me, we get to see it, we get to do it. And Yeah, the food addiction commercial determinants of health view says no, we need to look at how people are basically manipulated into
Mhm.
purchasing these foods, into altered brain chemistries, and basically, and a lot of people like personal responsibility. By the way, I do. I like the idea of it. Like, yeah, you can take charge of your life, right? And I'm not against it, but I think when you look at the neuroscience and
Yeah.
the microbiome science and the public health science, I think we're starting to see that this notion of free will is largely a myth. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
like the data doesn't support it. People that are in certain environments and with certain life stressors just aren't going to be able to have the same life outcomes.
Right.
Period.
Because of the pressures you just talked about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. And then Ricky is asking, how do you deal with the current world situation that makes food a way to reduce outer stress?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, it's almost like if you expect to do less of something or take something away, right? If you want to change something, I believe that the best place to start is to figure out what you want to like replace it with. What are some new sources of excitement or dopamine or
Mhm.
reward per se, and focus on getting those things in the picture before you even try to remove something else from the picture, right? If food is like a source of emotional support, or it seems, right? It's self-medication. It's been there your whole life, right? It's always been the thing that's predictably going to make you feel okay, at least in that minute, right? Like, and then you try to take that away. It makes sense why people would struggle. And then the food is one click away. Get it delivered to your house, right? On the app, just reorder. You don't even have to place the whole order again. I just know what I like. I mean, literally like 3 clicks. And yeah, I think it's valuable to think about new things, new hobbies, new sources of excitement, not just pleasure, but real happiness, right? What can we do in our lives to bring real happiness? And I've made the argument that if you can't find that, if you can't find some hobby, something that you're going to be motivated toward, something that really brings you joy, like, and you want to pull out like addictive food and emotional eating, I'm like, good luck with that. It's going to be really hard because your brain is going to feel like a void, and you're going to need something to fill it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's and that's why a lot of people, if you look online, there's these people that angry moms about the food supply with the kids, right? Like people that have taken initiative to challenge the food companies and the food industry. Like there's people that like have X accounts and an Instagram account and post every day, and they don't make any money off of it. They just believe in their purpose.
That's
And in
right.
doing so, they're not monetizing anything. They're just spreading the word. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and in doing so, guess what they get? They get a dopamine surge because they have purpose, meaning, and direction. And
Yeah.
maybe they can, change some other areas of their life.
Yeah. But I like this idea of replacing the sources of dopamine with that excitement, with that joy, with that happiness. And, I don't know that we, as a society, take the time to even tap into what brings me joy, what
That's right.
makes me happy, and have I done anything exciting lately?
We've confused and conflated pleasure and happiness because
Mhm,
pleasure can be monetized and happiness cannot. So we've been sold this lie that if
mhm,
this piece of pie, this latte, right, this outfit, this vacation or whatever, all these commercially consumed products and services are what's going to make us happy. And at the end of the day, we know that people that do too much of that stuff end up even less
This
happy.
is crime.
mhm.
Mm.
So, wow, this is so good. So, does anyone else have any other questions? We got about 4 minutes
Yeah.
left.
Someone
Um,
asked about understanding neurological and biological. Does it help in making changes? I would say for me,
yeah,
understanding the neuroscience of addiction has completely transformed my life. I obviously am at an advantage because I have a PhD and I do research and I have access to papers that a lot of people might not have. Um, but when I'm able to link what the neuroscience says with my own behavior, wow, the bird's eye view of my life becomes really interesting, right? Like I've struggled a lot with caffeine addiction, because I like to quit, I can be quitting all the time, like I'm always quitting, and coming back. You guys know how that is. But like being able to see the way, like, oh, when you introduce it again, how the mind, how amazing it feels, and how the mind assigns that feeling value, and that the next day suggest it. Even if I said I'm not going to do it, I watch the mind be like, actually, it's a good idea because you have a lot to do today. And you just start watching your mind. You start watching your thoughts and you're like, oh, that's fascinating. I cannot believe my mind suggested that to me. And then you understand why. It's because there's a part of the brain that wants the neurochemical reward and it's influencing the other parts of the brain to think in certain ways, and it overrides your logical thing, and you get these emotions and you feel distressed, and then you come to this conclusion that you're going to do it, and once you do that, the neurochemical response already occurs and it feels like the train left the station. So yeah, I think understanding the neuroscience is a game changer. And I really encourage people to think more about the neuroscience of addiction, not from an abstinence place, just like, oh, you have to be abstinent, but like understanding reward.
mm,
Understanding motivation and reward.
that's good. Well, we're going to have to leave it at that. You do have a gift for us, the 5 ways to improve mental health, and I so appreciate this. This has been amazing. But the neuroscience of addiction and understanding reward,
Yeah.
that
That
is a
free
huge
free
gift.
gift has 5 ways to improve your mental health using nutrition. There's some making your own salad dressings and spa waters. Those are some big hits. People that need to drink more water, just learning how to
Nice.
make some spruced up water. So there's a lot of resources in there, and it's
Great. Thank
linked
you.
to the Wise Mind Nutrition app.
Good. I so appreciate this. And then the
Thank you.
next, well, thank you so much, Dr. Wiz.